Freddie's now turning 9 in January, so he's 8.5.
Mm-hmm.
When he was born, at about 6 months or so, he stopped making eye contact really clearly. He started to scream randomly. And I was a doctor at the time, but I had no idea what to do. I had 20 odd letters next to my name, all the degrees. I'd achieved my dream job at 27, and I realized, is this it? I'd spent all this time studying pharmaceutical drugs, and then people come along and they go, this is the protocol to reverse diabetes. Disease or disease as it looks, it's not what it seems. Along that journey, my dad died. I separated from a 16-year relationship and the mother of my children, which has been incredibly painful. And I remember I was at my dinner table on a usual Sunday night. I was planning my week and I received a call from my mum, and my dad's in cardiac arrest. Big life events, they're trials and tests. They're times for you to find out who you really are. All anxiety and depression are suppressed emotions. They're suppressing your authenticity. Anxiety is a shame-based disorder. Never forget the purpose of the purpose. We're all here for happiness and peace. And if there's one thing that creates that, it's the quality of your connections.
Nilesh, welcome to the Driven Podcast. How are you?
Thanks for having me, man. We were just talking about food, weren't we?
We was both avid chefs in our pastimes.
Yeah.
So, welcome to the show. How would you introduce yourself to people who may not know or may not have come across you before?
So, I always say that I'm a kind, compassionate, loving kind of guy. That's the first thing. But if you're looking for a bit of a story, then I was a doctor. And now I'm working with visionaries and I'm helping them master their emotions with compassion. So what does that look like? We're all on a journey of growth, whether we realize it or not. We're all expanding into something. Maybe it's something that you want, a desire, a goal, a mission. And I'm there to help people with exponential growth within themselves, within their business, their health, in all aspects. So it's been an amazing journey and I'm very grateful for it, and we can dive a bit deeper today.
We definitely will. But before we do dive deeper, as you know, this podcast is called Driven. So what does being driven mean to you personally?
Being driven for me is being aligned with freedom, with a life of growth and service. All of these three things. And there's a reason why I chose those three words: freedom, growth, and service. And it's basically based on sort of deep psychological research. So that's what it means to me. Most people are going about their life driven by status, rewards, and awards.
Yep.
It's the carrot and stick approach. If I work hard, I get the carrot. If not, I get the stick. And ultimately, this kind of motivation, it's like coffee. It's temporarily stimulating and can be good for you in some cases, but in the long run, you'll receive a crash. And so the words I chose, freedom, growth, service, these are intrinsic, right? Which means when I go through a failure or a setback, which happens because we're human,
Yep.
I can stay driven and stay focused on what truly matters.
I absolutely love that. I think that's been one of my favourite definitions so far, because, and we've spoken about it quite a few times on this podcast, but it's not about the destination, it's about the journey.
Yeah.
And that journey, like you say, can have, bumps in the road. You're going to go through adversity and challenges in life, but having that focus or that drive to be better within yourself sometimes, and that constant growth and freedom is very important. So what's driving you at the moment?
Well, definitely my children have a big impact. I'd love to talk about my son in particular. So Freddie's now he's going to be 9 in January, so he's 8.5.
Mm-hmm.
And when he was born, at about 6 months or so, he stopped making eye contact really clearly. He started to scream randomly. and he started to have these kind of behavioral challenges. And I was a doctor at the time, but I had no idea what to do. And I remember going through real turmoil back then. That was one of the catalysts for me to learn about the brain in a lot more detail, and also for me to take up meditation. And yeah, he's been a massive driving force in my life, because as he grew up and he had challenges, now you would not know he's healed enormously and is an amazing young man. Good. He's essentially a born entrepreneur, I would call him. Great with people, lives at 100 miles an hour, he's got a brain like a Ferrari. And he's always building something, whether it's Lego or something in the house with cushions. He definitely inspires me to be more present, to create a life that means something, and to be in optimal performance. He really challenges me every day. But also, I'm also driven by this word compassion. And compassion is so innate within every single one of us. It's the one practice that's consistent across all spiritual traditions, whether you're into religion or spirituality. And it's very, very rigorously backed up by science as well. And the reason why I'm so driven by compassion is because you can't have too much of it. So a lot of people, you can't have, a lot of people are chasing things that they don't need. And I was one of them. I had 20 odd letters next to my name, all the degrees. I achieved my dream job at 27. And I realized, is this it? Which I'm sure many people have realized at some point in their life. And you have to experience it. And then once I started to look inwards, I realized that compassion, and it is, in the Buddhist text, it's called one of the immeasurables, something you can't have too much of. There's 4 of them. That's what really drives me. So if I can become more compassionate, and then if I can, through my own practice of self-compassion, inspire others to do the same, and encourage the people I work with one-on-one to become more compassionate, that's an amazing thing that I would have done with my life. So.
Well, we'll go into compassion a bit more later, and self-compassion that you talk about quite a lot. But what we tend to do with every guest is go back a little bit,
sure,
understand a bit more about your life at the start. So what was childhood like as you was growing up?
Yeah, I had a very blessed childhood, to be honest with you. I say that my mum was the advocate of a growth mindset before it was a thing.
Okay.
She was a teacher, and she was very amazing at helping me step into my gifts and my potential. I mean, just to give an example, she encouraged me to go a year ahead at school. Mm-hmm. And then that culminated in me graduating medical school a year early, so becoming one of the youngest doctors to graduate at 22. So I have my mum to thank for that. And my dad was very inspiring in his own way. He was, a very dedicated and loving father, and I went to boarding school, and he would drive, when my parents moved to the Netherlands, he would drive from the Netherlands to the UK to watch my cricket matches.
Wow.
I was very blessed with that. So childhood was pretty good. I think I had struggles like everybody does, and I explored those. And this is something that I explore a lot with everyone, and I encourage you to do this. And my struggles were largely around trying to prove myself, largely around being seen and being heard, feeling isolated at times. And when I started to uncover this, I realized none of these challenges are personal. They're universal.
Yep.
Right? We all experience these things at some point in our life in some way. But it took my own practice of self-compassion, my own work with meditation, my own work in coaching to really understand myself and understand those things. So childhood, I would say I was very blessed, but like anyone, there were challenges. Most of the big challenges, which I know we're going to talk about, actually came in my early adulthood.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And do you think you was always kind of, you say 22 when you became a doctor?
Yeah.
Was that always kind of what you was destined to do as a child?
I definitely was really focused from a young age to become a doctor. And I loved helping people. I loved science, loved the body. And I thought, as many people do, as a young Asian boy does, that I'm going to go and become a doctor. And I feel very grateful that I got to experience that. It's an amazing career because I got to intimately speak with thousands of people.
Yeah.
And it's a very intimate thing when you speak to people about their health, because you don't just talk about their health, you talk about their whole lives, especially as a GP. So yeah, I did always want to be a doctor. There were a few twists in the road, a few slip-ups in exams, but on the whole, I was into academics, I was into sport, I was into music. I was a very kind of busy young man, doing all kinds of things. And that definitely, I think a few things that were big from my childhood was a growth mindset. I was someone who was always really into growth and always improving. And I was always someone who was very loving. That's what my mum would say. I was very loving. I was very into connection and people and community, even at that young age. So those things are kind of carried on with me. Interestingly enough, my grandma was a psychiatrist and my granddad was an entrepreneur. And I feel like that's probably the most accurate description of what I do now, like the coming together of these two things.
Yeah, you kind of combine the two.
So I was a doctor for 11 years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I went through that fascination with the body, and I became a GP. So to become a GP, you go to medical school for 5 years and you train for a further 5 years. So it's 10 years of study. I would say that's something that really helped my entrepreneurial career. Anyone with a purpose is this delayed gratification concept.
100%.
Where you go, okay, it's a 10-year commitment and I'm not quitting. It doesn't matter if things are good, things are bad, we're going to get through it. So yeah, then once you become a doctor, I was then a GP for 5 years following that. And about a couple of years into being a GP, I'd studied really hard and I was doing well. I got my dream job as a GP partner, but I started to realize that the way we were being taught medicine wasn't helping about 80% of the patients that walked through my door. To put things into perspective, I would have 2,000 patients on my list. Sometimes I'd speak to 100 people in a day on the phone. Sometimes I would see like 200 prescriptions, like 50 blood tests of these people. It was an enormous amount of work. And I was thinking, there's something not right here. And my colleague put me onto lifestyle medicine. And I know you were looking at your Whoop earlier, right? Around 2018 or 2017, there was a big movement called the International Society of Lifestyle Medicine. And we learned that we could reverse diseases through habit change. Mm-hmm. And so I became really fascinated with that. And then I worked with the British Society of Lifestyle Medicine, and we started to reverse things like anxiety and depression, and even improves people's early dementia or heart disease or all kinds of medical problems, which usually we were treating with drugs. They just started to go away. And so that really opens your mind. And you go, wow, like if this is what's possible from me learning just these habits, what's possible? So I started to understand that habit change was where it's at. And then I went to go and study coaching. And I studied with various amazing people in the States. Now I'd studied the body, I went to study the mind, I went and studied psychology in depth. Even then, there was something that was kind of missing, which is where we are now, which is purpose. I started to realize, why is it that people don't do what they say they're going to do? Why do people feel stressed? And that's when I started to discover spirituality and purpose. And so, it's this whole journey through body, mind, and spirit, through being a doctor, then studying the mind, and then working with energy healers and all kinds of interesting people in the world of spirituality.
So do you think your perception of the industry changed when you started to learn about, lifestyle, lifestyle medicine?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, like I mentioned, that was a paradigm shift, Jamie. So, the paradigm shift is when the world looks one way, something changes and the world looks completely different.
That was it for you?
That was it. I mean, can you imagine? I'd spent all this time studying pharmaceutical drugs, and then people come along and they go, this is the protocol to reverse diabetes, where we had literally learned all the drugs and all the different receptors of what they do. And then people come on and they go, right, we're going to use plant-based diets, low-carb diets, Mediterranean diets. We're going to get people to sleep and move every day and all these things. And we watch people do it, and you watch the blood tests go down, and then you think, wow, we have so much power within us. And dis-ease or disease as it looks, it's not what it seems.
Yeah.
And then, one of the things I've mentioned to anyone listening to this podcast, right, is if you're feeling like unclear or lacking clarity or you don't know where you're going, the most important thing you can go and do is go work on your health. Go work on your emotions, go work on your health. Why? You'll notice when you're in an optimal state of health, and I don't just mean like, it's kind of difficult to explain this. It's a bit like Michelin star food, okay? Unless you've tasted it, you don't know the difference.
Yeah.
Once you've tasted what optimal health feels like and a clear head and mind feels like, you'll know, oh, wow. So I just encourage everybody to do the basics, sleep, and we can go into that, move, eat well, these 3 things, and do it consistently for 90 days or so, and watch your life start to change, right? Not just your health, the whole section. Because there's energy, right? Your energy levels get optimized. Then you think, I've got a new business idea. I have the energy to do it. I can see the opportunities.
And the clarity that comes with that as well.
Exactly. So it's a great place to start, which is where I started. I started to optimize my own health. And then I had all this energy to set up all of these projects. And I look back and think, how did I do it? And it was because I was feeling like so good from a health point of view.
Well, you're actually treating the cause rather than the symptom, aren't you? So, we're actually going to go into this in a little bit, so we won't touch on it too much now. But when you're sort of stuck in that sort of rut and you can't get out of it, and you think that the most productive thing to do is to work harder and do more work,
exactly,
you're not actually treating what the actual cause is, are you?
Right, exactly. And that was what I was getting to with my little flow through the body and mind and the spirit. So the root cause of any problem, anything that you face, is who you think you are. And this is why we always start with this. Right? What is a problem? People go, I've got problems in my relationship, or problems with work, or problems with other people. What is a problem? I actually looked up the definition of a problem. And a problem is an unwanted or unwelcome situation that needs to be dealt with. What resonates to you from that definition?
I reflect back on, as we was discussing before, I went through a period of counselling and therapy and things like that. Yeah. And that makes me reflect back to who I was at the time. And that was my realisation. It's exactly what you just said.
Amazing.
That, the problems that you have in life come down to who you are, how you think, how you react to certain things. And going through that process made me really realise that and learn a lot more about self-awareness and things like that.
Amazing. That's amazing. It's a great answer. For me, what resonates from that statement is wanting. Okay, so my curiosity led me from the body to the mind to the spirit, and eventually led me to study all the spiritual texts like the Bhagavad Gita, the Dhammapada, and the Tao Te Ching. These are 3 profound ancient spiritual texts across the world. And isn't it strange that they all say the same thing? They were different. You couldn't have communicated back then. And they basically talk about that the root cause of suffering, like why we suffer, why we have challenges or problems, is because of our craving and our wanting. Our life is chronically dissatisfying, right? And if you haven't understood that truth, that naturally every day there's successes and failures, there's wins, there's losses, there's your gifts and your dark sides, it's dualities. Until you've understood that truth, you're caught up in the story of, oh, life's great, and I've got a promotion and business is going well, clients are signed, and I feel rejected and off direction and low and I'm ill. If you're in that story, you can't see it for what it is, which is just the natural ebb and flow of life. And this is like the most important thing I can share with you, is to be more in the state of like equanimity, right? Be more in a place of peace, where you're not so movable by these external factors that are often completely out of our control.
Yeah, you touched on something earlier, which is delayed gratification.
Yeah.
Which I think is a massive problem in this society today. And we speak to a lot of business people on this show, and we'll have a lot of listeners who are business people as well. What's your take on that, on delayed gratification? And the way I see it at the moment is people scroll through TikTok or LinkedIn or Instagram, and people are posting how you can work 1 hour a week, be a multi-millionaire, and you can have it tomorrow. And the reality is just not like that, is it?
Yeah.
And I think that's doing serious damage to society, and you see that in generations coming through now.
Sure. Yes. Well, the literature on success and fulfillment is really clear. And that's that delayed gratification is one of the most powerful things you can do for your success and fulfillment. And it's all around, we were talking off camera about our friend TJ Power, and he talks a lot about dopamine. And it's all around this chemical in our brain called dopamine. Now, dopamine isn't what a lot of people think it is. Dopamine is the molecule of more. It's released in the anticipation of a reward. See how powerful that is?
Yeah.
But it's also responsible for motivation and drive and many other things. And we need to really, really take care of this neurochemical. Why? It's the only chemical in our brain that's responsible for a future focus. So literally it helps us design and create our future if we take care of it. Now, if you do a lot of instant gratification, which in our hyper-stimulating world that we're living in, it's the default. You're not a bad person or wrong or broken if you're giving in to instant gratification. It's natural. We all do it. It's quite challenging not to do it in this environment. But if you're giving into it over and over again, what you'll notice is you won't be able to have the drive to take on the big commitments and the big projects in the future. And that will hinder your own happiness and your own fulfillment as well. It will hinder what you're able to do. So it's all about the molecule dopamine. And what can you do? I mean, I've got these kind of 4 S's. If you can just avoid these 4 S's as much as possible, okay? And when I say these, I don't want people just wherever you are, it's okay. Just slice a little bit off. But sugar is a big one. Try to reduce your sugar intake, and the amount of sugar in things can be very instantly gratifying. Social media, of course. Shopping is another one, and the instantness of shopping. And then also, like, I'm calling it not sex, but porn, anything that's in that kind of quick, instant gratification. All of these things are going to tank our dopamine levels, and they're all going to get in the way of us having a more meaningful and fulfilled existence. Now, with the advent of AI coming out, things are becoming a lot faster and easier, which is a great thing. But there's a danger in that there's actually no excuse now for us to not be building our visions and our missions. Because the tools, even since I started doing what I'm doing, the tools have gone exponential in the last couple of years.
Crazy.
When I started, and Gary Vee was putting up videos with a meme video on Instagram, and I remember I wanted to create this meme video, and I hired a medical student at the time to type all of the subtitles of my videos and make sure that they're okay. That wasn't long ago.
But the fact that we laugh about that now shows how much that's changed.
That was not long ago.
Yeah.
That was in 2021, I want to say. 2024, 2021. The captioning back then was horrendously inaccurate, and it was like really difficult. And so I literally hired a medical student to check all the subtitles and type it all out. And everything, the design, Canva, all of these things. So there's a slight danger because things are so easy that people are not dreaming big enough. And yes, we need to be careful of our time, but we need to dream really big at the moment. And we need to dream long and dream big. And then as much as possible, create space to find out who you are, self-awareness. Because ultimately you can do loads of things, but if you're not aligned in who you are, you're not gonna be peaceful and happy.
Yeah.
Which is the purpose of the purpose. That is the purpose of the purpose.
Yeah. It's ironic you said that because I've got a coach that I work with, Will Polston, and he talks about having a North Star, which is your purpose.
Yeah.
But he says have a North Star so big it's the equivalent of emptying the ocean with a spoon. And by that, you're not getting that instant gratification where you're getting quick wins. Like what you're saying about AI and all these new tools coming out, it's so easy and so quick to achieve certain goals that you are having them highs and then them crashes. Whereas if you've got that bigger purpose that you're constantly striving to, that's always there. And it's, again, the purpose of the purpose.
Amazing. Yeah, that's it.
But so you went through your medical journey and you had a sort of a light bulb moment, an epiphany, if you like, a realization, and it sort of stemmed from a complaint that was made. So just tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I remember it well. I was the GP surgery I was working in had a really long wait time, which is not unusual in the UK, right?
Yeah.
And I took it upon myself trying to be the hero. So we talk about identities. This is another identity that I kind of had. I was like, I'm going to be the hero here. I'm going to prove myself that I can help this. But what happened was I took my eye off the ball. I took my eye off caring for patients. And ironically, an entrepreneur came in and I didn't see or hear her, or I didn't practice compassion in that moment. Got the diagnosis correct, but she didn't feel seen and heard in that moment. And it's really interesting because they wrote a letter of complaint and I didn't really know what this word compassion was. And which is the irony of being a doctor. So I went on this inwards journey. I started reading books from the Dalai Lama. I started learning to meditate on compassion. Then I started to read all the books on compassion, all the neuroscience on compassion, seeing how it relates to motivation and connectedness and reduces anxiety and depression. And I started to see like, oh, wow, like this is kind of the key to, or the key domino, if you like, to unlock what we're all searching for, which is happiness and peace. And it was a pivotal moment. It wasn't a linear journey. It was a lot of twists and turns along the way. I don't believe anyone who says it's a straight line. It never is. No. Amidst that time of learning about compassion and leaving, there were many years actually after the complaint. I was working as a doctor. I was still working. I was still successful. I was working as a private GP. I was working in companies' health. I was working in lifestyle medicine, like I said. And but as I started to go deeper and deeper into the journey, I started to just see that if I wanted to help the people in the most profound way that I could, if I wanted to be most on purpose, it was essential that I went full time into this mission. And yeah, I mean, it was an interesting moment. Along that journey, my dad died. I separated from a 16-year relationship and the mother of my children, which has been incredibly painful. And, there's been a second child somewhere along there in the way. This is all after I started the purpose. And it's quite funny, really, because I remember thinking about this. I remember thinking when I set up my journey, that I set up my purpose. I remember watching someone speak and they were talking about how their son almost died. And the next person who was on stage talked about, something else, like that how they had a heart condition or how they were really sick. And I was watching them thinking, I know I'd like a sense of purpose, but I don't have any really massive life events that occurred. And of course, within the next couple of years, Dad died, went through a really difficult separation. The son had his challenges, as I mentioned. So, yeah, I mean, if anyone does go through those big life events, they're trials and tests. They're times for you to find out who you really are. And in those times, you'll go through darkness. You'll slip up. You'll be in the ego. You'll say things you don't mean. It's all okay, is what I've realized. Is the past of the past. It couldn't have happened any other way because it didn't. And when you can adopt that forgiveness, you can hold people. Whether that's in your business and you're managing a team, and someone in your team goes through a significant life event, you can hold them because you know what it feels like to be walking through your life and then someone dies or someone gets sick. So when you've experienced it, you can really be with people. And ultimately, in the end of the day, that's what really matters, right? It's not the money in your bank account. It's not how many followers you've got or how much status you get, how many awards you get. but it's the connection with real humans.
Yeah.
People remember those moments. So that's definitely what the last few years has taught me.
Like you say, a lot of people, go through that period of adversity, which then sparks the next thing. And many of our guests have spoke about similar things where they've gone through a massive life event, and then it's led them to think of a new business or a charity or become a coach, or whatever it is. But you started that journey before your life events, and I think it's important that when people talk about certain things, that they have obviously experienced it, because if you're taking advice from someone, you want to know that they've actually lived it, even though it's obviously not nice things that you've gone through. But knowing what you knew, what was that process like for you? You see, your father died. You come out of a long-term relationship. How did you actually deal with those situations?
I mean, I'd like to say I dealt with them perfectly, but I didn't. I'm a human, and I can give myself grace in those moments. I mean, talking about my dad, I remember Dad had a lot of chronic health problems, which is what sparked both my brother and I to go on this optimal health journey. We both looked at my dad in his 40s and 50s really struggle with his health, and we just didn't want that. But I remember I was at my dinner table on a usual Sunday night. I was planning my week. I was doing my high performance coaching, ready to go and help as many people as doing my group coaching. And I received a call from my mum, and my dad's in cardiac arrest. And they'd gone to Sri Lanka on holiday. And I spoke to Dad, and I wished him well. I sent him love and spoke to him. I could tell, of course, he had died. He had gone to another plane. And interestingly enough, that really cracked my heart open the first time. That's actually when I started to get more into spirituality, because I was interested in it a little bit, but interestingly enough, after he died, I kind of started to see things very differently. I started to see the impermanence of life. And we can be here sort of complaining about day to day, but when someone's there 1 minute and then they're gone the next, you really understand that there's an impermanence to everything. Yeah. And so there comes a deep gratitude, a deep appreciation of your breath, your body, your existence, and your children and the people close to you. And so, I went through that, and if I'm honest, I didn't really understand how to process the grief. So that probably happened a bit later. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, that sort of fell on to the separation from the only woman that I've been in love with, which is my wife. And that was a very, very difficult thing to go through. I would say that when that happened in 2023, 2 years ago, that was like dark night of the soul. Initially, at that place, I was much more practiced in meditation. I'd done a lot more work internally. And so initially I was okay. But as time went on, a few months in, I actually went on a meditation retreat. And when you go on a meditation retreat, there's nowhere to hide. It's you and your thoughts, and you really see everything for what it is. And it really moved me. I was in a really difficult situation there for a few months, and there I have received, the way I said it is, all the kindness I've been putting out into the world, it all came back to me in those moments. My brother, my mum, my best friends, they all just came, they supported me. Yeah. I was so used to supporting everyone else, whether that was my patients or my clients or anyone else. And so again, and you see the truth of these things. You see, okay, it's cool that you can do all these things out in the world, but what are your close connections like? Who has your back? Who's here when someone dies, or when you're waking up at 3 a.m. with palpitations? These things happen.
It's when you see who's there for you, isn't it? When you go through these challenges in life, you really notice, who's your friends, who's your family, who is actually there for you.
Yeah. And this is actually the purpose of grief. It was another grief reaction. So grief from Dad and then grief from the relationship. And the purpose of grief is to both stimulate inner reflection, right? To look inwards. And it's also to summon aid, to summon support. And grief really strengthens the bonds between people. And what you realize is, wow, like one or two during the period of separation. My closest friend, who was the best man at my wedding, and we call each other every single day, and still goes on today. I call him every day, and it's like it's completely priceless when you go through things. It's really priceless when you have that. And so you see the truth of it. You see the truth of it. You can be doing all these things, achieving all these things, accomplishing, but being is where it's really at. When you feel that unconditional love for yourself and for others, and that's the power of compassion. So it's those moments have been very transformational for me, and now I can see the magic in them. But what I would say to anyone who is going through, or if it hasn't happened yet, it will happen at some stage, whether you're in your 50s, 60s, 70s, it's going to happen. What I would say is the most important thing is to take space, and take more space than you think you need, because we always underestimate. Take 2 weeks off, 4 weeks off. Just stop and sit in whatever it is that's going on at that time, and allow yourself to feel and process. This is really difficult, by the way.
No, I've been, as I said, I've been through therapy and stuff, and that was part of what we done, is actually digging right into that emotion and sitting there and feeling it.
Amazing.
One of the hardest things you can do, I think, but once you get through that and actually understand what it feels like, be able to live with it, be able to come through it, it's a massive power.
So what did that give you?
Felt like resilience.
Yeah.
It felt like control.
Yeah.
I would say.
Amazing. Yeah. I mean, and this is the thing. When you start to, for me, I say your emotions are a compass to your authentic truth. So when you get to feel your emotions, you get to find your authenticity. And instantly, think about this. When you're in your authenticity, when you're in the true identity of who you're meant to be, it's so much easier to say yes and no to certain things. That's for me, that's not for me.
Yeah.
This is where my purpose is. This is what I value. This is what I don't value anymore. So you can live your life. And if you're playing your authenticity right, to people around you, you should look like very different. It should be very clear. If you're doing your authenticity right, you will polarize people. So, grief, although is a difficult thing to go through, we'll all go through it in some stage. And it doesn't always have to be death. It can be about a belief system. It can be leaving a friendship group. It can be leaving a career, anything.
Yeah.
And when you're there, remember, reflect on who you've been, the habits, the character, the way you speak, the words you say, all of these things, your successes, your failures, you reflect on that. And then also you get to see who are your people. Yeah. And there's a pruning. So the phrase is, although things look chaotic, everything is actually moving you to a more orderly state. Had I not been through these things, I would not be in this place of the most peaceful and happy place I've ever been in. So I don't have any regrets about any of those things.
It's all the journey of life, isn't it?
Exactly.
You talk about self-compassion quite a lot.
Yeah.
And you talk about the 3 A's of self-compassion. So just talk us through them. What are they?
Amazing. Yes. I'm glad you brought that up. So self-compassion in the Buddhist term is showing an awareness of suffering and taking action to relieve that suffering. But I like to define it as the ability to embrace, enhance, and release any emotional state. And the power in that is huge, because we all go through different emotions, from shame and guilt to anger, fear, envy, inspiration, joy, love, all these different emotions on a day-to-day basis. And if you can have the ability to release emotions or enhance them, like expand them, and also the ability to embrace and move in, it's an incredibly powerful place to be, because your emotions, they're guiding you to your authentic truth. They're your fuel for growth. And they're like a chemical compass. They're a compass that's guiding you. So if you don't pay attention to your emotions, if you don't practice self-compassion, the downside is you could be moving really fast, but in a completely the wrong direction.
Yep.
There's a classic Stephen Covey quote, which is, you could be climbing the ladder, but make sure the ladder is against the right wall. And the only way you know if the wall is right is your emotions, Jamie. And this is why self-compassion is so freaking important. It's why I'm so passionate about it. So you don't get 1, 2, 3, 5, 10 years into a relationship or business partnership or a mission and you realize that was terrible. I regret all of that. So the 3 A's is awareness, agreements, and actions. And it's a simple practice that anyone can do every day, at the end of your day for about 15 minutes. Obviously, if you do it more, even better. And you just tune in. How did I feel today? What were the emotions that I felt today? That's the awareness piece. Then whatever it is, whether there's some fear or anger or blame or shame, you then go to the next piece, which is you agree and you move in, you lean into them. You would have done a bit of this with your therapist, where you agree and you say, I welcome this fear or I welcome this anger, or it's okay that I'm feeling this way. And this is a really key bit of compassion. This is called common humanity. This says that there's a humanness in all of us. I could be a guy with 100 million in the bank and, you know, all these followers. I'll still experience these emotions on a day-to-day basis. And then the last day is action. So this is a kind of a big belief shift I love to share with anyone in the personal growth industry. There's so much stuff out there about breath work and meditation and visualization, all these amazing tools. But action without awareness is like you treating the symptom and not the cause. So we only take action once we've become emotionally aware, once we've learnt into the emotion. And then the action might look like anything for your physical self, to care for your physical self, your intellectual self, your emotional self, or your spiritual self, 4 parts of the self. So you can ask when you're doing the action, what do I need? If you're doing this when you're going to bed, you can say, what do I need for my self-care tomorrow? I need to meditate. I need to make sure I drink 2 liters of water. I need to make sure I do my journaling or sing or dance. All these really small things, self-care, that actually have profound effects on our emotional well-being. Now, the last thing I want to say about why self-compassion is so important is ultimately in the research, unequivocally with certainty, it's the single most important thing you can do to prevent anxiety and depression. And so basically what we're saying is it helps us feel positive in the long run, and not fake positivity, but real authentic positivity. So why is that so important? Well, positivity has 2 purposes. The first is it literally helps you see more opportunities. So it will literally change the way you see the world. There's a great kind of Derren Brown documentary, if you remember it, where it's about luck, and they prime this person to feel more lucky. And he starts they leave a £50 note on his doorstep every morning. When he's negative, he doesn't see it. When he's positive, he sees it. Literally changes the way you see the world. And the second thing is, which we spoke about, positive emotions, they fill your cup. And naturally, this makes you more resilient. Every day we get the setbacks and things fall out of our cup. And when people are going through stressful situations, right, we don't often put the attention on the situation, but we put the attention on the self-care. How can we fill up the cup? How can we elevate ourselves so we can handle more and so we can bounce back? Because we need to resource ourselves for difficult times. They're always there.
So because I completely understand that and completely agree. And there's been times in my life where people I know have suffered some, it might be anxiety or not feeling great. And they know the things they need to do to fill their cup. But taking the action or realising that actually they need to do that to make themselves feel better isn't always there, or they might not take the action.
Exactly.
So how does someone, if someone's listening and they, they're feeling these feelings at the moment, how do they go from the understanding of what they need to do, but to take the action? Because action's often the toughest thing.
Yeah, of course. Listen, I've got 2 little kids, okay? And my daughter, who's 4, she doesn't like to brush her teeth, okay? And we laugh about it. You and I know how important it is to brush our teeth. If we don't brush our teeth fall out. We can't eat. But my daughter's still learning that in the world. And so that we have to sometimes give ourselves the tenderness that we do to children when we're learning about these things. So the reason why you don't take action is always because of basically a couple of things. You don't really understand why you feel this way, why that's so important. You don't understand yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why I put so much emphasis on compassion and understanding and love, because it is everything. When you can see that the anxiety is caused by, I'll tell you what the real cause of anxiety is in a minute, but when you can see what the real anxiety is caused by, then it's easy to take the action. And because you've understood yourself. It's kind of like that friend, if you go and talk to a friend about a struggle and they jump in with advice before they've actually listened to you. Yeah, and it doesn't feel good, does it? That's what we do to ourselves quite often. We don't see and hear ourselves. We don't actually go, that's why I feel that way. So that's the most important thing I would share. And there's a few other things like why we don't take the action. And that is, sometimes it's environment based as well. Okay, so we've made the action too difficult to do. And it's much easier to hit Deliveroo or to do a one click on Amazon than it is for us to meditate. Mm-hmm. So what do? We make it easy. We set up a space. Probably one of the best bits of advice from Habit Change I can give you. If you want to create a habit, you have to have a space for it. So you put a mat down in the corner of your room and you put a little, anything to signify meditation, maybe a blanket there, or maybe, a candle, anything. So, that is my space. Mm-hmm. And that makes it easy, and that acts as a prompt. But what's the real cause of, if someone is going through difficult anxiety and depression, what I would say is to say it's completely okay to feel this way. That you're not broken, there's nothing wrong with you. And that really all anxiety and depression are suppressed emotions. Okay, and they're suppressing your authenticity. You're disconnected from who you really are. I encourage people to read the book Lost Connections by Johann Hari. It's an incredible book, but that goes into more detail about exactly why disconnected from our values, disconnected from nature, disconnected from meaningful work and purpose, etc. These are all more sort of clear causes, but anxiety in particular, there's an amazing person I learned from called Chris Germer, who's a lecturer at Harvard, and he teaches mindful self-compassion. He teaches the whole self-compassion training globally across the world to thousands of people. And he says anxiety is a shame-based disorder. This is really profound. So when you're experiencing a lot of anxiety, there's something that's hidden that if people saw it, you think that you would be judged for and you would not be lovable.
I can see that, yeah.
So when we hear the word shame, people often think of really big things like having affairs or, treating someone really unkindly or maybe having like a secret addiction to drugs or alcohol or something. And yeah, that's on one end of the spectrum, but there's shame within all of us, and it can be things that you believe in your world would render you unlovable. Mm-hmm. But if you shared it with a professional, you would realize in that moment that actually this is certainly not as big of an issue. But because you've hidden it, because of the way you've often been brought up, because the love was conditional at some point, that causes a shame to be there, and that shame then is manifested as anxiety.
But it's quite subjective, isn't it? Because what you might be shameful of might be something different to what I'm shameful of. And if it's an internal feeling, that's why people, and anxiety can be spread across multiple different things, can't it?
You got it, exactly. And this is the truth, right? This is the truth that we all learn, that we all see the world. I like to think of myself as, you say, I could have introduced myself as a compassionate mirror. And in Toltec wisdom, there's this thing called mitote, which is the fog. But there's often a dust on the mirror through which we look at ourselves and through which we see the world. Mm-hmm. And this is exactly what you're talking about. If you understand the profoundness of this concept, then you'll understand that, okay, if I'm experiencing anxiety right now, and if I observe my thoughts, And if I observe them without judgment and decide to let them go, then you'll start to see that you start to see completely differently. After a while, there's very, very simple practice, the 3 A's. You become aware, you welcome the emotion and let it go, and then you take action, these 3 A's. After a while, you'll start to notice the trees look completely different.
Yeah.
You'll start to smile at people on the street. You'll start to have wild, magic, luck things happen in your life. I've got a bajillion stories of that. And people might think that this isn't true, but I encourage you to try that. There's a lot of science behind it. So yeah, the anxiety and depression is definitely a difficult one. Don't be hard on yourself. Be kind to yourself in those moments.
Yeah.
See things clearly. Be mindful. Be in the present moment. And then understand that we all go through difficult times, that it doesn't make you inadequate or not good enough or unworthy.
Yeah. There's one last thing that I want to touch on before we finish up, which is the 3 brain systems you talk about, which is I believe threat, drive and soothe.
Yeah.
So just tell us a little bit about your framework there.
Amazing. I'm so glad you brought that up. Yeah, so the 3 brain systems is based on Paul Gilbert's work. So a lot of the work I share, by the way, and I encourage people to go and look it up, because I love reading and I've read from a lot of different sources. But this is from a really amazing compassion teacher in the University of Derby, and he's globally known. So he speaks about these 3 brain systems: the soothe system, the wanting system, and the threat system. And they're basically in our brain, all controlled by different chemicals in our brain. We spoke a bit about dopamine earlier. So dopamine is the wanting system. If you remember, we did the definition of a problem, and it's in an unwanted situation. So wanting is often the source of our pain. So most people in this current world that we live in are flicking between the wanting and the threat system. Okay, so we feel amazing when we get what we want, and when we don't, we feel in threat, we feel unsafe, we feel in fear. So the wanting system is controlled by dopamine, and the threat system is controlled by cortisol and adrenaline and noradrenaline, these other chemicals. And we're not spending anywhere near enough time in the soothe system. And that is the soothe button is activated by self-compassion. And that's where we see the release of oxytocin and endorphins. And this helps us feel calm and present in the moment, no matter what else is going on around us. It helps us have happiness and peace. And the soothe system is very simple to activate. If I was going to give you 2 bits of ways to activate your soothe system, I'd ask you to think of a baby. How do you soothe a baby? Well, if you watch a mother or a father pick up a baby, instantly they give physical touch and contact. And then the second thing they do is they often do a calming, like soothing, shh, 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 shh. Okay, baby. Like, these things sound silly, but they're deep in our evolutionary biology. We have a mammalian caregiving system, and self-compassion is learning to give that care inwards to ourselves. So you can literally, and we do this, I do this a lot of my clients, like this area from here, from the shoulder to the elbow, and we slowly like hold yourself or touch yourself, and you just stroke in this area. It's activating the soothe system in your brain very quickly within a minute or 2. And then the other thing is the self-talk. So imagining that you're going to speak to yourself like with a soothing voice, yeah, like how you would wish you were spoken to as a little child.
Not just a soothing voice, but the things you're saying as well.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. The things you're saying, like, it's okay. You know, there's nothing wrong here. You haven't done anything wrong. And making sure that you're, in the same way people might have an objection on this, saying, well, does that just mean you're going to sit on the couch and eat crisps all day and you're going to turn into someone who's... The people who I work with, the high performers, that there's very little chance that they'll ever do that in their lives. Yeah. And so they kind of look a bit fearful of me when I ask them to practice self-compassion. So Aristotle spoke about this amazing thing called the golden mean, okay, which is where we want to be in the middle. Excellence is actually in the middle, okay? So it's not pushing too hard or being too lazy, it's being in the middle. It's not being too much in drive, but also in soothe as well. And so this is what self-compassion does for these high performers. It's often most of them are too tipped into the action and not the awareness, too tipped into doing and not in being. And so self-compassion is often bringing them back into this golden mean,
Yeah.
so they can be in a state of excellence,
Yeah.
be in their best and their potential. Yeah, so 3 brain systems: want, soothe, and threat. And essentially the main thing to remember is we just need to be more in the soothe system. Because naturally when we're in the soothe system, the other 2 systems are not active.
Okay. There's some great advice there. Something I'm definitely going to be taking on board personally as well. At the end of each episode, we ask each guest to give 3 pieces of actionable advice. And the benefit of the goal of that is that if everyone listens to every episode and they take all 3 pieces of advice from everyone, you know, we've had lots of people with different experiences, you know, it's really going to help them on their journey of life, business, you know, passions, whatever it may be. What would your 3 things be for our listeners?
So the first thing, which we've spoken about already, but it is a really, really important point, which is start with your emotions. If you have a business or a mission, you need to start by getting to know yourself, because this brings me on to point number 2. So if you want to set up a project or a mission, you must know what you value and who you are. That's going to be the lens through which you make all of your decisions, whether you hire staff, whether you decide to collaborate with other businesses. It's all going to come down to your values. And if you haven't got that dialed in, that's going to be more difficult. And I would encourage you to not just pick 4 words out of a hat, but do a deep values exercise where you chart the highs and lows of your own life, and then you look at what you've learned from these periods. That's what's going to create your values. And then the third thing I would say is to never forget the purpose of the purpose. And it's so simple, but we're all here for happiness and peace. And never ever forget that. You can have your North Star, but never forget that the purpose of the purpose is your happiness and peace. And if there's one thing that creates that, it's the quality of your connections, the depth of your connections. If you can go deeper with someone you love, if you can be vulnerable, if you can share a dream, a hope, a desire, you can understand their schedule and their priorities, these basic things, that's worth everything. All the business, all the other stuff you got going on, it does come down to your happiness and peace, which is going to be found through connection to yourself and others.
Was it 2 or was it?
That was 3. Yeah,
okay, that was the third one.
Yeah,
Okay.
start with your emotions, and then number 2 is understand what you value, and then number 3 is
I was
purpose of the
deep into
purpose.
listening.
Good.
It's perfect. Well, look, I've absolutely loved this episode. I wish we could be here for another hour, because I think we could definitely talk for another hour. But you've been amazing. Where can people find you, follow your journey?
Amazing. Thank you so much, Jamie. It's been a pleasure. It's always fun, and I really loved how you brought the questions today. It was so
Perfect.
good. So yeah, at drsatguru.com. So DRSATGURU.com. You'll find that. If you want to find me on LinkedIn, it's the same, Dr. Satguru. Instagram, it's the same. And I love connecting with people, as you know, so do reach out. And I can't wait to see where this goes.
Lovely. Thanks for coming on. Take care.
Thanks.
Thank you for tuning into the Driven Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Drop a comment to let us know what you found most insightful. But most importantly, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. I'll see you in the next episode.